Last year, we brought in about 1.4. Most operators or owners, they see between 15 to 18% in margin because of a lot of the operational excellence that we were able to implement. We're at about a 31% profit margin. Every month I had a lot of anxiety because at the end of the day, my neck was on the line for all of it financially.
What's your kind of philosophy on how to maintain this relationship between the family and work and the gym and everything else? Like, how does that work with you?
I live life in seasons. My season may be 2 quarters. It may be a full year.
Okay.
To where, hey, honey, I'm working 70 hours every week this season. I don't subscribe to every day has to be fully balanced because it's just not. The straw that broke the camel's back of why I knew I needed to make a change. My wife was tremendously.
Welcome to the Legacy and Wealth Podcast, a show for proven high-earning men who value wealth, character, and a lasting legacy. Brought to you by The Standard, a private membership community for high performers. My name is Mitchell Clark, and today I'm joined by fellow Standard member, Howard Osaitile.
Thanks for having me, man.
All right. Well, you are actually probably one of the first ones in the Standard that I met, primarily because you live relatively close to me and we go to the same gym. So I appreciate, I've been looking forward to this for a while. So
Of course. Absolutely.
Well, let's get into it because I know a lot of this off the top of my head, but I'll let you kind of explain right now, how do you currently make money?
Yeah, man, I do a few things. So primarily I am a tech consultant. Right, so I work for healthcare clients. Specifically, my niche is university medical centers, but I'm a consultant in that matter. I'm also an entrepreneur. I own and operate 4 healthcare organizations in Middle Tennessee. These are 24/7 inpatient medical homes, residential assisted living facilities.
Okay. As far as what percentage right now of your life are you doing one versus the other, like 50-50 or?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So primarily how my day-to-day looks like, the client that I have as a consultant, that's full-time, right? So I put in a good 35 to 40 hours a week. However, the organization in Nashville, that brings about 15 hours a week, is more absentee driven. I have full management, staff care there 24/7.
Okay. Is you primarily, does your wife help you out with that too, or?
Yeah, really good question. I think we're gonna dive into this.
Yeah.
Primarily, so my wife is not involved in the business now.
Okay.
Right. However, several years ago, she was paramount. Just because my wife being a clinician, having that clinical background, she was able to kind of sift through a lot of the things we needed from licensing, credentialing, and get us started up. And then from there, we kind of developed a very strong operational playbook and was able to remove her as her hours dwindled down. And, we had a second child. She was able to kind of focus on that full time.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's really cool. As far as the business you have in Tennessee, how many facilities do you have? Like, explain how big of an operation that is right now.
Yeah. So the best way I would communicate that, and it's different in different states, right? So the best way is basically a residential assisted living home, right? So we get residential locations, we gut them out, we go through, the nooks and crannies to get licensed and credential for every location. We get the right permits, and it becomes a medical facility.
Okay.
So we own 4 of them.
Okay.
The average square foot in every location is 2,200 square foot.
Okay. 4 locations, 2,200 square foot. How much revenue in general does that bring in year over year? Let's say for last year.
Yeah. So last year we did really good after we changed our model to focus on what we know and what actually works based off the demand. So last year we brought in about 1.4.
Okay.
And that year was typical for a lot of the work that we did the year before with the scaling, aligning operations, and getting the right clients in the right locations with their staff.
Okay. How well are the margins for a business like that? Was it pretty well in the profit margins, or what were you looking at right now?
Typically, most operators or owners, they see between 15 to 18% in margin.
Okay.
Because of, a lot of the operational excellence that we were able to implement, we're at about a 31% profit margin.
Okay. That's really impressive. I know It's becoming a little bit more popular now with some more entrepreneurs, kind of like that's becoming I hesitate to call it a sexy topic, but it's becoming a new thing that's becoming a little more popular, is going to the assisted living, which is interesting that you already kind of got into this field, many, many years beforehand. But let's rewind it back. What made you want to get into, we'll go into both. What made you want to get into tech consulting? And then what made you want to try out this entrepreneurial venture? Let's go into that a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. So, a little bit more about my background. My parents are immigrants.
Okay.
Right. So growing up, we always used to hear, you got 3 to 4 options, right? Doctor, lawyer, engineer, or the fourth one is the family failure, right? Well, I didn't go with those top 3.
Okay.
Right. But, hey, here comes technology, here comes healthcare. That's supposed to be a comfortable job to where, there's always in demand. So I kind of blended both. Okay. Right. I got my first glimpse of what consultant life was as an associate right out of college. I got a job as an associate consultant. We had a different name. It was an associate implementation lead, right? We acted as consultants. However, learned everything I needed to learn from that role, right? Went to a Fortune 4 company, the biggest healthcare organization in the United States, right?
Sure.
To be number 4. I worked there for 4 years. And at that point in time, I decided that, hey, I kind of hit my ceiling, right? I got a lot of certifications, right? I think today I've got like 6 of them as alphabet soup behind my name. But I went back to get my MBA.
Okay.
Right. So getting my MBA, the school I chose specifically, there was a pipeline to the Big 4 consulting. Right. Okay. No matter how smart or dumb you are, you kind of get recruited right into, one of the Big 4s. Yeah. And one of our goals was to move it to the Houston location. So, I decided to go to LSU. It made sense to me. Was going to relocate to Houston at that time to get a job at one of the Big 4s.
Okay. So with timeline with that, how long ago was that when you went to go get your MBA?
That was in 2020.
That was in 2020. Okay. Was it right in the middle of the pandemic, or did you apply afterwards?
So I applied right before.
Okay.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
So much going on, right? I had so much planned for 2020, but that's a topic for another day.
Sure.
So just during that time period, just identifying, okay, I'm kind of at a high level leadership role in my company today, right? I want to soar. I want to get to that, that VP level by the time I'm 35. I want to accomplish these things. So, a lot of my mentors and family, of course, say, hey, go ahead and get your MBA. It will serve you in the long haul, right? So it was an investment. Got the MBA. I made a few connections, and then I figured out the path to the highest salary, right, that I could get from a consultant. Was going the path that I did today.
Okay. So you figured out that path, and that was after the MBA. Beforehand, though, what would you get your degree in?
Emerging technology. So
emerging technology. Yeah. Okay, gotcha. Okay, so you did that. You worked for a little while, then went to get your MBA, which I know some people kind of do either or. Some people get their MBA right after college or in the middle of college, or some work for a little bit and then do that. From your perspective, did you see any value in working a little bit first and then getting your MBA, or would you have done it differently?
So my perspective, working first, kind of maxing out my current market level, that was paramount. Okay. Because not only the certifications and experience I had allowed me to shave some credits off of my MBA that they accounted towards, okay. Right? So I did a 2-year program in one. Okay. Because I was, my path was, how can I get to that goal as fast as possible, right? What school allowed me to double up on classes so I can graduate and really change my family's life.
Okay. Well, let's back it up a little bit. So, we kind of know what the destination we're going to. With your family, because I know you said you only had 4 options, and clearly you didn't have the 4th one, or the other 3. But what was their expectations on you in terms of, what was kind of that dynamic growing up there that made you want to choose to get more into the business realm versus anything else? What made you choose business as opposed to the other 3 options, which are fine options?
Yeah, really good question. So my wife is a clinician, right? She's an RN. She's been an RN for the last 12 years. So she's worked in many different settings, in the ICU, bedside nursing. She's basically done it all. The impetus or the straw that broke the camel's back of why I knew I needed to make a change my wife was tremendously burned out,
Okay.
done with it, right? And especially leading up into the pandemic, work became less safe for clinicians and the burden doubled, right? You're taking care of people who have, a deadly virus in them, right? We all know it's COVID-19.
No, I knew a lot of nurses that were working during the COVID pandemic. It was extremely stressful time for a lot of people. So, yeah.
So understanding that she was burnt out, I felt based off the conversations we had, we needed to do something to replace some of the income she had coming in, right? So initially, I'm thinking of kind of a lower tier side business that I can run and manage my job because I'm trying to, climb the corporate ladder.
Right.
Looked into a lot of things. We've started different LLCs, and then we quickly pivoted because we said, hey, why not go for the big one?
Okay.
Go for the big one, right? She encouraged that. She was also paramount again. She's a partner with the business. We use a lot of different things to get credentialed, licensed, et cetera, because she has a clinical background. And from there, we found the demand, marketed, got the right clients in the right locations, and we scaled from there.
Okay. Let's focus on that. We'll get into this business is a very unique business, and then we'll probably pivot back later and talk about your W-2 and all the things you're doing there, because I think that's pretty interesting. But let's talk about, so right now, it's the pandemic. Your wife's feeling burned out. You want to make a change. You're looking at some different businesses to start up. Let's start from the beginning of how you got into it, why you got into it, and then how you built it up into what it is today.
Yeah. So one of the nurse traveling assignments my wife got was with one of our biggest competitors today.
Okay.
Right. And I was asking her questions like, okay, how are they running? If I said the name, you may even know because they're in multiple states. How does the day-to-day look like? How do you think they're doing that? What type of nurses are they bringing in? So I was inquiring a lot because I knew that from a lot of the research that I've done while I was in business school, I read books like Built to Sell, right? Kind of understanding your competitor's playbook, right? Get in front of the right company to get a 5 to 10x multiple from a sell perspective. So having that bird's eye view of what some of the biggest competitors in our region were doing, kind of gave us an advantage, and it gave me a little bit more comfort and security.
Okay.
That if I could mimic this, I'll have success too.
So your wife was working in this area, basically your competitor now, and basically identified a need where I'm assuming in this region, customer service is probably a really big thing where if they're not pleased with the product, it's wide open for a competitor to come swooping in. And you just happen to be that competitor.
And I think what you said is very important, right? So within our organization, my top 3 pillars as an owner and operator is leadership, is culture, and operational excellence, right? So all 3 of those assembled correctly leads to better experience. A lot of the people, a lot of the family members and the clients, the moment I start talking to them on the phone about the services we provide, it's a day and night experience of what they've been getting in the last 5 to 10 years.
It's good for you, but so unfortunate, just given, the population that you're dealing with and kind of the vulnerability that they have, that their mind's blown away by even just the basic amount of human decency in that area. But that's good. I'm glad that you are able to help fill that role. What did that look like starting out? What was your first initial steps of getting into this?
Yeah, so I was the person, mind you, I was a full-time consultant at the time, right? So some of my daytime hours when you need to, make the strategic calls, it was a challenge because I was, working from 5 p to 10 p, right? Doing a lot of the back office, making sure things are going. But primarily starting out, I knew I needed to have at least a 66% occupancy at my first location to stay in the black, to zero out.
Okay.
Right. I was very lean in my approach of operations scaling and giving everyone, the most grand experience. Their grand experience was me. Right.
Yeah.
I had to put myself on the line and out there because I didn't want to get someone from the outside to kind of coach them to cultivate this type of experience that I wanted them to have and believe. so they can understand 90 days in that they made the right choice.
Okay.
So a lot of the marketing, a lot of the boots on the ground, what I call road shows that I did with the right referral agencies, allowed me to secure at least 66% occupancy before we open our doors.
Okay. So let's get into this a little bit. So you have one location, 66% occupancy. How many rooms is that? Like how many people can you fit into that one facility?
So every state is different.
Okay.
The state of Tennessee, most locations can max out at 5 private bedrooms.
Okay.
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 Our first location, we had the kind of the picture perfect 2,500 square foot, 5 bedrooms, 2 stories. It worked well.
Okay.
So that location had 5, and starting out, we had 3.
Okay. Well, when you say 66% occupancy, I mean, how were you able to achieve that pretty quickly on? Like, how long are the terms, I guess, when people are going in there? Do people normally sign up for an entire year at a time, or do they normally take it on like a month-by-month basis?
Yeah, so the state of Tennessee, we do a year-by-year, and we just call it, a basic residential lease.
Okay.
Right. So from a recurring revenue standpoint, right, you can at least project out a year. Granted, you hit the KPIs that we identified and we're delivering on the services, you can at least benchmark out that, hey, in a year from now, I should get X revenue recurring.
Gotcha. What was your occupancy with the first one? Did that go off pretty well? Or?
So, I honestly feel as if God kind of allowed us to some things to just land on our lap. Granted, I was, tired, running the wheel of getting the right clients.
Nope, I understand that, yeah.
But the moment we opened that house, we hit our minimum.
Really? That's I heard that like fortune in business is usually when luck meets preparation. But if you're not prepared, right, and when luck comes a knocking, it doesn't matter anyway. So
yeah.
That's really good. So for something like that, do you just open up a house, or what are some like logistical things you need to do in order to make that house qualified for a residential living area?
Yeah.
Versus the living.
There's a few layers, and I actually have a few friends who are inquiring more of like my services of coaching to help them get there. So I will talk about this at a glance, but as a whole, you need to ascertain the location. You got to acquire the location. You have to have the right permits in place. You have to have the right approval. You have to do a demographic assessment, right? So you cannot be, I think it's greater than 10 miles from the next one. And a lot of people don't register certain locations on the applicable sites that they should.
Okay.
But once you find the location, you get the right permits, and then you go through an inspection.
Okay, so you do that. You're, going off to a really good start there. What moved after that? How long did you stay at one location, and what did that scale kind of look like after the fact?
Yeah, I think this is one of the growing pains I had because, I was running like a bat out of hell.
Yeah.
Right? Literally, the following month, I opened up the second one. That was mistake number 1. But I was going fast, and, I wanted to gobble up the entire territory.
Okay.
Right. So a month later, we opened up the next one. Some of the clients were not the ideal clients that we wanted for that home, but I had to move fast and take risk. So we took them.
Okay.
Right. We took them. We stayed in the black. We're at 66% occupancy. We're able to run and manage the home. And I want to say 3 months later, I opened up the third.
Man, you are not wasting any time.
I was not playing.
Well, and let's take a pause right there, because you and I have a little bit of a similar experience where we have our W-2s, but we also have some things that we're running on the side. So I get when you're busy with W-2 and meetings and everything else, and you're trying to squeeze in these emergency calls in the middle of the day. Yeah. But did you find that easy to do with like one location, and then it get harder as time went on, or how are you managing that transition a little bit?
Yeah, it was a challenge because the client I had at the time was very demanding, right?
Yeah.
They from a consultant perspective, they asked a lot out of you. They had high demands, high KPIs, ROIs, and the stakeholders were these are people in New York. Okay, so just imagine that. The challenge with trying to manage both of them in that short period of time, I realized really quickly that you truly have to pour in to the staff, right? You've got to pour into your bottom line. Your boots on the ground worker. And it's less of, hey, I just want a paycheck and I'll do the work and I'll clock out. They need to be supported themselves. They need to meet the Maslow hierarchy of needs, right? Everyone's got things going on in their lives. And if you don't have the right incentives, benefits in place to support that, they'll shrug their shoulders and, hey, why come into work tomorrow?
Right. Well, I know, especially for the nursing profession, it's very easy to get burned out because you're dealing with a lot of, you're dealing with people that are kind of at their worst, right? You're not dealing with people at your best. You're dealing with people that are going through like the worst that life has to offer in terms of health or, declining health or whatnot. So what were some things that you used to kind of pour into the staff to keep those operations afloat?
Yeah. I think initially, right, because I was someone who had lean operations, I had to use myself.
Okay.
Right?
Most good entrepreneurs do, yeah.
I had to use myself. That was the one thing I could count on, right? It's the thing I could control. The first month, I went through 3 managers in 3.5 weeks. And I had to figure something out. My hiring process was abysmal. A lot of the folks who were looking at this type of position, I think I did the inverse of what you should do. I hired fast, fired slow. Right.
Okay.
And today, I would definitely do the inverse. I'm going to hire slow and fire fast once I see the signs.
Okay.
So I went to 3 managers in 3.5 weeks. And then again, I think God allowed, the perfect guy to kind of come and I upsold the position he was even applying for.
Okay.
Right. I told him a lot of the leadership skills, attributes that I think he possessed, right? And I'll be able to train him and get him up to a level, right? And today he's still with us.
Okay. So, all right. So one location, high occupancy rate right off the bat, and second and third. How long was locations 2 and 3 in the black until you're able to turn things around?
Yeah. So location 2 got in the red the second month.
Okay.
Got in the red the second month.
Lovely. Yes.
Got in the red the second month, and I had to confront some hard truths about the level of aggression and EBITDA that I was looking for.
Now, this is while you have the third location open.
So before I opened the third, number 2 got in the black. Got in the red.
Okay.
Yeah, very quickly. So a lot of work that we had to do, a lot of still was hustle, right? I didn't have the right systems down packed. I didn't have the right hiring protocol, training protocol. So we were in the red quickly, and we had to build a plane as we were flying it. But I saw an opportunity for location number 3. And here I go again, that aggression wanting to scale fast. I still opened it.
There you go. I love it. That's so great. We'll figure it out. We'll be all right. Yeah. Okay. So it sounds like there's a lot of sweat equity. You lived in Tennessee at the time too, right? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So living in Tennessee, definitely helped, right? So I managed that business for, I think, 16 months or so before relocating here to Dallas. Wanted to make sure it was in really good shape. But at that time, I'm doing runs 8 p.m., 9 p.m. at night. If I need to go drop something off, if I need to go to the warehouse and bring some items, I was doing it.
If you want to connect with high performers like today's and previous guests, I want to invite you to apply to join the Standard. We are a private membership community that improves the health, wealth, and relationships for 6-figure earners who perform at the highest level physically, emotionally, spiritually, socially, and financially. What we offer is simple. We will give you a vetted local brotherhood of men on your level or above. We will give you a customized plan to build true generational wealth. We will give you a personal liaison to achieve all of your goals. If you are tired of being the most successful person in your circle, frustrated with always pouring into others and not having anyone to pour into you, or you want to have conversations like the ones you're hearing today, in person, on a weekly basis with fellow high performers, go to thestandardmen.com to apply. That's thestandardmen.com. Hit the link in the description below. Now back to the episode. Okay. So how long did it take before you were able to get location number 2 out of the red and into the green?
That took about 6 months.
Okay.
It took about 6 months. Now, another reason why I was so optimistic to open number 3, if I could operationalize 1 and 3, it would offset the red for number 2. right, collectively.
Okay.
Right. So that was the goal. Honestly, number two, it wasn't going anywhere anytime soon. It's going to be in the red.
Okay.
I need, revenue to offset that.
Okay.
In number one and number three.
How'd that turn out?
It worked pretty well.
Okay.
It worked pretty well. Every month I had a lot of anxiety, right? Because at the end of the day, my neck was on the line for all of it financially. But it worked out. We ended up hiring someone in a leadership position that was a part of my wife's family. She was phenomenal. She really helped us while we did not have our stuff together, right? And she was patient. She was flexible, right? She could take my call at 8 p.m., which I wouldn't try to do to anybody else, to figure it out and figure out what's really going on.
Right.
So she helped with a lot of the stability. While on the back end, I'm able to sell, right? Get the right referrals, get the right people into that house.
Okay. Okay, so you have the 3, you're opening up. At what point did you feel like you had, when was the location number 4 opening up?
That opened up 12 months, 14 months apart from the first location.
Okay, so this all really happened almost within the span of a year.
Yes.
Okay, and why stop at 4?
So now we get into the good part.
Okay, all right.
So one thing I realized I learned about scaling, every home doesn't scale the same way.
Okay.
We have a steady state of operations with managers, senior management, and staff. 4 is the capacity. The moment I introduce a 5th location, I need to rearrange my infrastructure.
Okay.
I need to rearrange how we hire. I need to rearrange the level of management that's overseeing different homes because I don't want to stretch people's bandwidth. So a 5th location would actually likely it won't put us organizationally in the red. It would put that location in the red because of the amount of infrastructure that would go with it. It would make more sense to open up 3 homes, right?
Okay, yes.
Because of the management, the infrastructure you need to have in place and just have 1 additional.
Okay, so it wouldn't make sense to go to 1. You'd have to, if you're going to go in again, you'd have to go big or go home.
Yeah, because it needs the same amount of oversight.
Okay. How long did it take for you to reach the margin that you have? Because you said earlier about 20 to 15 is like good, pretty decent, and then you got to that. How long before you were able to get to a 30% margin?
So my wife, up until maybe 12 months ago, she was working maybe 5 hours a week.
Okay.
Right. She actually holds a position with the title, but it's not enough work to hire for that position. But I started to learn about some offshore workers, right? VAs who could cut the costs and honestly man some of the same thing. I would be hiring double the amount if they're onshore.
Okay.
So to get to that 31%, it took about close to 20 months.
20 months? Okay.
20 months.
I mean, it sounds like it was fast and furious, but one thing, we talk a lot of people on the show about different strategies and different tactics you can implement and going smart, hard. I'm of the opinion that there's always ways you could do it smart, but there's no substitute for just getting in there, doing the really hard work and learning as you go, because that experience does provide a learning module where because every scenario is so different. Like you said, you opened up location 1 and like 100% occupancy day 1. Why wouldn't you go for number 2 or number 3?
Exactly.
And then as you went, you just it's faster to learn the lessons after it's been taught to you rather than trying to figure out all the answers before you actually get into it. I mean, what's your take on that?
Yeah, there's a mixed approach with that, right? I'm a heavy data person.
Okay.
After you learn from mistakes, you need to have data. You need to know the demands, and you need to know what KPIs will allow you to equal your level of success. But on the other hand, right, sometimes you do have to bet on you if you've shown that in the past you can deliver under immense pressure and you can rely on the outcome that you want to get. So I'm mixed with that, right? If the data shows you run, I would never tell somebody, just go in there and figure it out.
Yeah, sure.
Maybe
sure.
you can do it, right? But for us, and even in the world that we're living in today with AI and so much changes governmentally, I think your risk tolerance has to go up if you want to start a business and potentially scale it. you have to have a higher risk tolerance. Something that we were talking about prior, before we started, you mentioned failure, right? You mentioned like, hey, I think, from an Ivy perspective, you don't want to get into failure. Right. What I've been doing lately to help my mental health, I had to redefine what failure actually means to me.
Okay.
In the past, it just meant things aren't going the way I want it to go, a little bit too much stress,
sure.
right? I don't get it, I'm frustrated, my heart's pounding, versus clear words. Is failure bankruptcy, right?
Okay.
It's failure ego because you thought I could do more than what you can actually do.
Sure.
So for me, having to truly define what failure means for a specific business helps me in my decision making.
Okay. So like something like, we only made 1.3 million as opposed to 1.4. It's not a failure.
That's not failure.
Right.
That's
or
not
shouldn't
failure.
be a failure.
Yeah. Exactly. So, I just think having your own definition of failure or definition of success for you, that means a lot, right? Okay. For me, my definition of success as a whole is the level of effort that you put into something.
Okay. Well, and this is such a niche topic, and I'm really glad we kind of got into this a little bit. I'm going to ask you a few more questions on this, but where do you see, because I've seen this being touted on social media a little bit more recently as like something that entrepreneurs could get into. Cody Sanchez is one of the, she's the laundry mat, queen or whatever. And whenever she talks about a lot of different businesses, like this is one that I've seen pop up on hers and some other channels, but where do you see this business going in the future? Is there a reason it's getting popularity now? And do you think it might be almost too late to get into it at this point?
That's a good question. I do know the requirements have heightened, right? So going back to the statement my wife made before we started was, let's go for the top dog.
Okay.
Right? Because the barrier of entry to get into this field, depending on your state, is high.
Okay.
It can take you 18 to 24 months before you're even licensed and credentialed.
Okay.
Noting the amount of money that you're going to spend because you need to have a physical location. It needs to go through survey, it needs to go through credentialing, et cetera. For that, I like the security because of the barrier of entry is high. But yeah, you got the Cody Sanchez, you got the folks out there who are talking about, rails and it's the way of the future. I think for anyone who is looking at business, you need to ask yourself, are you an investor? Do you like to invest in businesses and watch them grow from the sideline? Or are you planning to be an operator because you have a purpose driven with what you're doing? I think if you are the latter, I think it can make sense for you.
Okay.
I think people who fail quickly in these type of businesses is because they have a perspective that this is an investment. People are going to do their thing, then I'm going to get a $10,000 check at the end of the month. That's not the case.
Okay, so if you were an investor looking at this, do you see a future in this being a fairly high return on investment now, or do you think that ROI is probably going to go down a little bit in the future because of the additional regulation?
Yeah, I think it will at least remain steady. So the good thing about our field, specifically for the state of Tennessee, is they have like 10-year federal funding and basically governmental statutes that they make for our field. Okay. So we knew from a rate perspective, from a demand perspective, that we're steady from 2020 to 2030, right? There won't be changes. If anything, it's going to be a 1.3% increase, which it has been since 2017.
Okay.
So with that being said, depending on your state, it's a good bet.
Okay. That's fair. I work in medical advice in the medical space as well. There's one thing I do like about it is, not anyone can just hop in. There's FDA approvals and everything else. There's a little bit of a barrier to entry that kind of keeps like a ton of people from coming in. Why did you decide to move to Dallas? So you had a pretty good thing going on in Tennessee. So I'm kind of curious.
Yeah, I know, right? Dallas, I will first say...
Besides the fact it's just a great place, yeah.
Right. I sat on the decision and did a lot of research for about 12 months before we actually moved to Dallas.
Okay.
I think I mentioned prior, early 2020, we were going to move to Houston. We're going to relocate there. Houston is, the medical hub of the United States, right? If you look at their medical center, it looks like a metropolis downtown of nothing but medical buildings. So Houston was going to be the part for us. I chose Dallas for two reasons. Well, I would kind of say three. I think the first reason was we wanted to go to a location that was business friendly, right? The demand of new growth, the amount of people who are moving into this location, it's going to be constant demand. So if you can get there, plant your feet, right, the demand is there for you.
Okay.
I think one of the other reasons why we moved to Dallas, how we like to live, I have a family, I have two small girls, and primarily we do a lot in our suburb.
Yeah.
Right. I honestly feel that in this quadruplex of Frisco, McKinney, Plano, Allen, we probably live in the best four cities in America when it comes to suburb living.
I would agree. Yes. I was going to say, because I live like 10 minutes away, and I agree. It's the construction here. So the amount of people moving here is just insane. I know in Frisco, I think like 20 years ago, like 6,000 people lived there, and now it's like 230. I mean, the growth is explosive, and it's not slowing down.
It's not slowing down. It's only going to get better, and it's going to push you northward. Right. So we always desire to have like a suburb to where it has everything you want. The schools are really good. There's a sense of community there because so many people have only been there for 2 to 3 years, and they're all looking for this level of connection. Right. So I think that's reason number two. And then also, I think, just really being HQ, the hub of the Standard, meaning guys like you, right, having that immediate connection, but also like to cultivate an environment for my family.
Yeah.
Right. Around these type of people.
Well, I'm really glad you said that, because I wanted to pivot into that, because you have a unique perspective. I mean, lots of people in the Standard do, but you and I are like almost the exact same age, married. You have 2 kids. I have 1. And your wife was a big part of how you got into your first entrepreneurial endeavor in the first place, in addition to the W-2 you ran. So when you and your wife were focusing on this assisted living venture, how did that impact family? Like, how did you and her kind of talk to each other? Like, how did you all do business together, but also keeping the marriage intact? What did that look like back then?
Yeah. That's definitely someone I can go toe to toe with.
Yeah.
Right. Like, she's a true partner.
Okay.
Right. She's helpful from a consultation perspective. She's helpful. From really just being able to spitball and just get things out of your head. The funny thing about business, growing up, I didn't have anyone in proximity who owned a large business or owned some level that, it was obvious maybe by the way that they live that, hey, I have a business that's grossing, multiple 7 figures. So I didn't have anyone immediate in my proximity to talk to about this. What are the risks? Should I do it? How do I go about it? Do I get a mentor? So it was just my wife and I, right? But we bet on ourselves that the direction that we want to go for with our family and what we want to leave them from a legacy perspective and what we want them to inherit and see day to day, what we wanted to model, this was it.
She sounds like she's pretty aligned with you. Does she have that same entrepreneurial bug?
Yeah, my wife is very creative. She's on the creative side, right? So many thoughts can come in, and we balance each other out, right? When it comes to chasing the next shiny toy and figuring out something that's realistic, recurring, that will be stable. So I love it. She challenges the system when it comes to that.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit more about the family life, because I mean you've got your W-2 the side and everything else, but I also know you have a pretty bustling family life as well. So what does a day in the life look like for your household, and how do you navigate everything through a day-to-day basis?
Yeah.
Let's start with waking up in the morning. And I ask this because you and I go to the same gym, and I know you are adamant about getting there early in the morning and getting that workout in. So from the time you wake up, what does the whole day look like?
So for me, let's just start on a Monday.
Yeah.
4:30 in the morning, the alarm goes off.
Let's go. All right.
Me going to the gym is not optional. It's a ticket for the day.
Okay.
Right. So 4:30 in the morning, I wake up. I'm at the gym from 5 to 6. Immediately when I get home at 6 a.m., I start work. My wife, on the other hand, we have a 1.5-year-old and an 8-year-old. right?
Sure.
And fun times of their life. And the 1-year-old is attached to her like water and rice. So she is, full-time mom. She enables me to truly focus on the future, where we're planning, where we're going, because I am not interrupted consistently, with small kids.
Sure.
So I typically work from 6 a.m. to about 5:30. Come home, have family time from 5:30 to 7-ish.
Okay.
I do some finishing touches on work from about 7 to 8. Help with, maybe a little bit of schoolwork, right? Just kind of getting the kids along, even though my wife probably takes on 90% of that.
Sure.
Right, but I'm there.
Right.
And then, 9:30, we're in bed. And that's typically our Monday through Friday, Monday through Thursday.
Okay. And then back before, because you said you have a 1.5-year-old, so you just had the one child while you were going through the assisted living phase.
Yeah, we did.
Okay.
And then, when it was still in its infancy stages, my wife was pregnant, we had the baby, and, some of the pictures I look back at now, and I'm just, 9:30, she's in my office.
Yeah.
And I'm doing paperwork, or I'm doing some type of work. At that time we were stressed, but we took a lot of photos. We took a lot of videos of that, because we knew, hey, in 5 to 10 years, we're going to look back and say, hey, look at, how we came together. It looked chaotic. We didn't even know if we were going to make it.
Sure.
Right. And we kind of have that proof.
That's crazy. That's a really cool story, because I know a lot of people think that in order to be successful, like there requires this sort of sacrifice of, like, you got to put, like, family kind of not last, but just kind of a bit on the back burner and everything. I know for a lot of successful men, a lot of them tend to have relationships and marriages that kind of struggle a little bit. It seems to me from the outside looking in that you put a very high prioritization on your family and on your wife specifically. Do you feel like that's the case? Do you feel like you could probably do more? What's your take on that?
Yeah, I think apart from the purpose that God has put me here to do, my family is definitely a strong part of my why.
Yeah.
Right. We talk about, hey, when we're in our 50s and 60s, how we want life to look, right? How we want our kids, et cetera, coming home, having dinner, going out, vacationing together. So definitely my family is a strong why of everything that I do. When it comes to the dynamic of working with my wife, I think someone who is starting a business of that scale with that amount of pressure, I definitely could have done it a better job identifying that, hey, you're not just business partner, you're also my wife.
Yeah.
Because I can be very, I'm an impatient person in general.
Sure.
When it comes to business, I'm even more impatient, and I demand my outcomes. So, we are constantly having to have conversations that, hey, we have to have a safe word, right, when we're having business discussions, and I'm operating as COO, and maybe you're operating as chief medical officer, and we clash.
Yeah.
I'm not going to give in, or I'm not going to give any type of escape because you're my wife. This isn't normal discourse.
We got to go to the same house at the end of the night. Yeah.
So that was a challenge. And I think now, where we're at in the business, being able to fully remove her is probably the smartest bet.
Yeah.
Because again, she has more of the creative genius.
Sure.
And, I can bring a lot of the rigor, discipline, and operations to business.
And also raising your kids too.
Yeah.
I know it's funny, when you talk about your marriage, me and my wife are somewhat similar, where I feel like I'm like the discipline structure guy and she is the creative side. Yeah. And there's definitely parts where she has been a part of my business and everything else, but we recently went through this. We're working on a different initiative together, but there came a point where we had to define very strict boundaries of, like, this is like our working relationship. But if I'm ever like reaching the boundaries of that where it's starting to affect the marriage, like, okay, well, let's just cool off. Let's keep certain boundaries, that way we can keep that professional life a little bit separate from our marriage life. And basically that means, like, a couple things we're working on, I just give her complete autonomy over. So that way, I don't even know what you're doing. This is your thing, go nuts, call me when you need my help, and that sort of element. But I do think it is helpful being on not just helpful, it's necessary they have to be on the same page. All right. So one thing I wanted to ask you, you have your W-2, you have this business, and you have, the family life you're dealing with right now. One thing that we've been talking to a lot of people on the show is like, what is their thoughts on like work-life balance? Is that a thing? Is that a myth? Like, what does that mean to you? Or what's your kind of philosophy on how to maintain this relationship between the family and work and the gym and everything else? Like, how does that work with you?
Man, that's an interesting point. I think first and foremost for me, since I am married, when it comes to work-life balance or major decisions, I think it's what two people agree upon will be our truth in our household, right? So I live life in seasons, right? My season may be 2 quarters. It may be a full year to where, hey, honey, I'm working 70 hours every week this season, right? But I promise you, right, once we hit X date or X projected number, this is how life will change. And I'm doing them for X reasons.
Okay.
So I don't subscribe to, okay, every day has to be fully balanced.
Sure.
Because it's just not, and that's life. Or I'm doing it wrong. So I think what's more healthy and more beneficial to hit certain goals is have your seasons, right? So I think I mentioned before, I play sports, right? Let's say football. Football is not 12 months out of the year, right? For a condensed period of time, they give their all, right? Coaches work 120 hours a week,
Sure.
right? Players are putting in time. They're focusing. They're having a lot less time with their family. But there's an off season.
Sure.
You know when it is, right? The middle of February, right? So you're going to have me from February to maybe June for OTAs, and we're going to go to Disney. We're going to do these things.
Sure.
So my life is similar of once I get through these seasons, I'm going to be in and out every year. Let's agree upon how we want our season to look like.
Okay. No, I've heard similar things from a lot of people where it's like you kind of have to take these things in sprints, right? If you're going to achieve something like going pretty hard and strong in the beginning, just to kind of get things up and rolling. But then once you reach a certain threshold, then you kind of start focusing on the other areas of life. I know for a lot of people, there's questions like how long should that sprint be, all that. What is that conversation? Let's say you're starting a new project. I know, you were kind of on the table of like starting up a new initiative and how that all work. And assuming, let's say you think that would probably take you a good 9 months to really get this off the ground and you'd be in that 70 hour a week-ish kind of mindset. What does that conversation look like with your wife before you dive into that?
Yeah. I think ultimately it's my responsibility to do the legwork to figure out the actual details behind it, right? I prefer to bring her something, 90% fleshed out.
Okay.
With some optionality, right? With some outs, right? So, for example, if I knew I was getting ready to go through a very hard 70-hour a week for 9 months, what I tend to do is have certain what I'll call stage gates within that 9 months, right? Which is a breather or a release or a vacation that we get to go on,
Sure.
right? Because I know, hey, number one, you having kids, the question I'm asking, what support do you need to fulfill your end that we want to agree to, right? Is it nanny care? Is it some type of schooling for the kids? I need to make sure you have what you need to be successful.
Okay.
So we agree on that. We figure out what that looks like. And then throughout that 9-month period of time, I need to always make sure, hey, let's have our weekly check-in, 15 minutes at this time. Is everything going right? Do we need to revise? Right. Do we need to pivot?
Make sure she ain't leaving you. Yeah.
Got to make sure like everything's still good. You remember what we agreed upon?
Yeah.
So, having, the minute check-ins to maybe even like a quarterly trip that we get to go on as a family that I can etch out in the schedule. And then on the, at the end of those 40 weeks, hey, this is what we birthed. This is how life will be able to be different. My time will free up. So it can be a win-win.
No, I appreciate you saying that because I'm kind of in that sprint phase right now where I'm with a new company and I'm like in the running for the President's Club and for Rep of the Year. And then I'm also scaling this thing, this business. I'm also doing the social media thing. I'm also preparing for a men's physique competition. Okay. which in hindsight, it might have been a little stupid to do all this in a row. But I don't know. It just felt like that season where I'm like, let's just do everything now and just go off the reservation for 3 months and then enjoy everything afterwards, which sounds like, I mean, maybe I wouldn't advise everyone to do all of those things all at once, but it sounds like you kind of have a similar mindset. Like, listen, this is going to be a period of time where I'm locked in, I'm going, but there is going to be a stop point. And once that stop point's in, then we'll kind of realign the focus a little bit. Because I know sometimes when you're in this sprint of life, you're prioritizing, which for us is probably the financial endeavors that we're doing. What are some other, since we're talking about that and like, you're joining the standard, what are some pillars in your life that you feel like you need to focus on sometimes that might be neglected whenever you're focusing on these financial endeavors?
Yeah, I think as men, oftentimes when you hear about what your role is in the family, you hear provider, you hear provisioning, right? But I think there's so many other things that are part of the standards pillar that help to bolster providing and provisioning, right? Your emotional health, your spiritual health, right? I think for me, something that I can quickly ignore and not focus on is probably my emotional health, right? Really taking the time to go through history and identify limiting beliefs or wounds that took place that were traumatic that caused a change of behavior, and now you have a certain belief, and now you move a little differently. What really happened there, right? Sit in it. I don't do that enough. Me and my wife were just talking this past weekend about it, funny, and I was like, I'm very big on the why behind the decisions I make, because if you're not clear on what metrics you're unconsciously calculating in your head to make a decision, you're going to be on autopilot, right? And you're probably going to repeat a mistake, or you're just going to keep wondering, why do I keep getting myself into this type of situation? So a pillar that I neglect, unfortunately, maybe because I don't have clear metrics of how it's going to enhance my life, is the emotional side.
Sure. Well, and we bring that up. We've had some other people on this podcast who talking about why the emotional pillar is so important. Do you feel like maybe that could be another transition, like when you're done with the sprint, where maybe the first thing you do is like take a little bit of extra time to invest in those other pillars? Like for me, for example, I know my faith's important. That's a good way I do my emotional regulation. So kind of focusing on church. But what are some things that you do when you transition to the next stage to focus on that pillar?
I will be fair and say I think I need to get better at that and identifying that in general.
I don't think any of us are good at it, so you're in good company.
But something that I try to do, which again, I think I need to closely align the benefit of doing something, but consistently, experts say journal, get your thoughts out there, write them down, name them. I don't do that often. I have a notebook, just don't consistently do it. I think I'm not clear enough of the value. I can't see it. It's not tangible.
Sure.
And I don't know what area of my life this can impact for the better, or which area of my life it is decreasing the quality or the output that I could do if it was in check.
Okay. Next question I wanted to go into, because with what you're doing right now with this entrepreneur endeavor with the assisted living and your corporate job, because I'm going through something similar right now. Is there a point that you think you might leave corporate to do that full time, or do you think you'll kind of keep them both in tandem, or maybe just use the W-2 as like your consistent thing and then cycle through different initiatives? What's your mindset? What's your future goals with that?
Yeah, I definitely would say, being a consultant, having that W-2 gives me leverage with how I want to start a business.
Okay.
Right. It's not a fire drill from day one. I can really think and make smart decisions. So it's extremely helpful. And, in reality, I'm the sole provider for my family.
Yeah.
Right. I got to make sure if things hit the fan, we're good regardless with the decisions I'm making. However, in a perfect state, right, the business I have, whether I'm able to double it or expand it into another investment, The goal would be to, continue to be a business owner and kind of elevate myself to an investor to where, having a W-2 actually just makes no sense.
Yeah.
And I'm just managing multiple businesses.
Sure. Okay. So there's a future that could be a possibility, but not just at the moment.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fair. Now, I think I kind of like what you said, where it does take the pressure off, where if you're not burning the bridges, it can kind of give you some time to think through it a little bit more. Because I think when you're like in that like panic mode, you tend to make somewhat irrational decisions when you're like in the red and you're trying to get it back into the green. You're like, oh no, what's going to happen? Because you're worried about paying rent or anything else. Do you find that the W-2 kind of brings a little bit of that anxiety down? We're like, hey, even if that burns and fails, like I can still have this and I can just try something else.
No, it does. It definitely does. And I'm always, that's like the battle I fight.
Sure.
Daily. Yeah. Of what is the equation I use to guarantee that if I had 35 more hours of my time not having a W-2, what does that equate to from a business perspective? Right? I don't have good enough metrics to quantify 35 additional hours per week to say, yes, I now need to remove myself and go here and I'll get to X number. That's still very vague, right? It's a little nebulous.
Sure.
So, yeah, I think having more clarity of those out pockets, right? Sure. Like, okay, this is, I'm at 20. Right, I don't need to say hit me anymore. Right. And now it's time to go. So I need to figure that out more.
Well, it seems like something a lot of people are doing right now, where it's more of exploratory, where they're looking at some different things they can do and seeing what takes off and what doesn't. So I understand there's probably some value in this, like burning the bridges, going into it and scaling. And there's people that do that and do really, really well. I do also think there can be some value in kind of exploring that for a little while and kind of taking the edge off. What I've seen a lot in mine is a lot of the skills and lessons I'm learning in my corporate job apply very well here, where I'm applying lessons. I know it's a little bit separate, but do you ever find that some of the lessons you're learning in your corporate job may translate over to your entrepreneurship? Or even just like future things you might want to do?
Mm-hmm. All the time. On the corporate side, you have access to, high-tier clients, right? They've already did the pilots. They know what systems work, right? They know how to scale. They have the right, processes and people in place.
Sure.
I'm really able to learn from that and bring some of that to my business today.
Okay. So you can kind of see what right looks like before going your own thing. Well, and we're talking about the family and everything else. I know within the standard, they talk about legacy quite a bit. And that actually reminds me, because you've been in the standard for how long?
Yeah, man, that's a good question. I would say around December of 2022.
Okay.
I think it was the last week of November.
Okay.
So
what made you? Did you join that when you came to Dallas?
So I was still in Nashville for about 2 years.
Okay.
There were, I want to say, about 3 guys in Tennessee. And we're all in like each of the major cities, right? You had somebody in Memphis, Nashville, Knoxville. We're all 3 hours apart from each other. But I would say one of the driving forces of being in the standard. So I'm the type of guy who I'm very much internally motivated, right? If I say I'm gonna do something, I'm gonna do it, right? And I'm gonna do it a certain way. However, growing up, I've always been an athlete. In structured sports since I was about in 7th grade, right? Sure. So I knew the value of being around other strong guys. They call it a locker room environment. Except, I just didn't want to be around anyone, right, who's a bunch of rah-rah. Like, that's wasteful.
Yeah.
Right? But, I took the leap of faith at the end of 2022 from a perspective of, hey, if these core values, right, specifically from men who value and honor their spiritual relationship with God, their emotional health, right, being honest with their past wounds, who they really are and where they want to go. And then, hey, from a legacy perspective, what are you building? One of the best ways to build is within the family, right? Combining all of those together, I saw some things out there online. Again, I wasn't able to touch and feel or really talk to anyone. I took a leap of faith because in my mind, I was like, hey, you've been saying you want to be around these type of people.
Sure.
Right? So if you don't do it now, just don't say it again.
Yeah.
Right? That's kind of like my internal dialogue. So, I pulled the trigger. I made it happen. Of course, the first 2 years, there was a lot of growth. I was distant, right? I think Atlanta was like one of the major cities that was 4 hours away. I went once or twice. But moving to Dallas definitely was a game changer.
Sure.
Like we were talking before we started, proximity is one of the undisguised. It's a superpower in disguise.
Yes. Well, definitely, especially in an area like the DFW Metroplex. It's just, it's so big, but there's so many people spread throughout. So it makes it a little bit easier for everyone to kind of get together, depending on traffic. But since moving here, what have you gained from some of the relationships within the Standard?
Yeah.
Anything in particular?
I think it's two ways, right? I think I gained a lot of just a constant reminder that, hey, when you go work out at 5 a.m. in the morning, you're not an anomaly. Right? Oh, you're working, you're hustling, you're bustling on your business. You're not an anomaly. And the reason why that's important, because sometimes if you're not around people who are doing that with you, in the back of your mind, you can start to have doubt and say, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
This is enough. I'm good.
Yeah.
Why do I need to do more?
Right. It's funny. I was talking with a friend of mine about this concept because I remember thinking back when I was in high school, best grades and everything else. And I felt special. And then in college, I kind of felt the same way. And then I remember there's a certain time in my professional career where I stopped feeling that. And someone was like, yeah, that's probably a good thing. If you feel like you're the best in every single environment, like, yeah, I'm sure if you were to go compare yourself to your high school class of, whatever, you'd probably be like, yeah, I'm top dog. Like what need is there for me to improve? And I think it is important to kind of keep yourself in this baseline of like, I'm not the best in this room. Yeah. If anything, probably be best in the room where you're like bottom of the barrel. So that way you have nowhere to shoot but up. But I mean, I don't know. Do you feel like that's pretty accurate? Where like the further on you get in life and the further that you establish yourself, it takes more, I guess, conscious effort to surround yourself with those types of people?
I would say yes, yes, and yes.
Okay.
Because it's not just going to come to you. Access to people who are doing these type of things is oftentimes, unless you are, some influencer and, you actually want to get someone to buy your course, is not publicized.
Yeah.
It's not publicized. You'll have no idea who's really doing it because they're busy doing their thing. So, no, I think I had to be, and I still need to be more intentional being around it. You're right. It's kind of the whole perspective of, you don't know what you don't know. You don't know what you don't know, and being around it starts to expose your weaknesses. Yeah. Right? You may think, hey, I've got this strong armor on you, right? But be around someone else who has it and maybe even more, and they're poking holes, and you figure out, I need to go back to, I got work to do.
I know at the conference last year, they talked a lot about legacy, particularly a family legacy. And as someone that, has strong investment into your family, what does that mean for you? And how do you and your wife and family express that?
I think that is, that's one of our highest pillars. One of our highest, our North Star are the things we're doing align with the legacy we want to leave? So I think for me, it's less about what I accumulate, what I have, and what I'm able to do, and more for my kids and those around me is stewardship, right? I think how you're able to impact somebody's life, right? If you're able to help cultivate values that they may want to uphold and live out, and help cultivate that with them, that's a part of stewardship. I think leadership. I think, the impact that you can make from a community level or state level, I think that is a lot of the legacy that we want to be known for. So when you hear my grandkids, their last name, right? They know a lot of, okay, I know about your family because you guys, this is what you do. Right? That's a lot of what I want to see take place. And I think above that, first and foremost, would be for my kids and of course my wife to always be aligned with the purpose of why they're here, why God put you here, right? That's the number one reason why we do it all. right? To be aligned with the bigger picture of why we're here as humans, right? What we're really trying to do, and keep that in mind with all of the decisions that they make.
Yeah. Well, and you mentioned faith in God and whatnot there. To you, is your faith and kind of religious practice a part of the family day to day? And how exactly does that work?
Yeah, absolutely. That is what keeps us together. That's what keeps us grounded. That's what keeps us going and motivated. That's what guides us, right? So we actively practice those things. We actively talk about them daily with our kids. We read books, read scripture. We pray together. That is truly what kind of keeps us together and grounded.
Okay. Well, look, great conversation. I really appreciate you kind of giving us the behind the scenes of this business that you built that kind of complements alongside with the W-2. That's not an easy thing for anyone to pull off. I know, because I'm currently kind of going through what you're going through right now, but in the earlier stages. But I appreciate you going through all that. And if people want to get to know you, just to kind of pick your brain about some of the things that you're doing, or to kind of figure out what are the next steps that they would need to do to kind of do what you did, what are some ways that people can get a hold of you?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. So I do have a social page that is kind of is borderline dead, right?
Yeah.
But I have my website, which is a part of my consulting group, is osaitilec.com.
Okay. All right. Well, hey, I appreciate you coming here, and I'll see you at the next one.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.